W.
Welcome back to Cohort W, the podcast where we break down the Warrant Officer cohorts past, present, and future. I'm your host, Chief Warrant Officer 4 Jessie Morlan. And if you've been tracking this season, you know we're diving deep into the future modernization of Warrant Officer professional military education. As the battlefield evolves, so must we. How we train, educate, and develop warrant officers needs to align with the Army's vision for the future fight, and today's guest is at the heart of those efforts. Joining us is a leader who has spent decades shaping the warrant officer cohort, Chief Warrant Officer 5 Stephen Napoli. He's the Deputy Commandant of the United States Army Warrant Officer Career College, or USAWOC, which means he's directly responsible for influencing the future of our PME. But his journey started long before that. CW5 Napoli enlisted in 1993 as an Aeroscout Observer before transitioning to become an aviation warrant officer. With multiple deployments under his belt and a career that has taken him from the cockpit to the classroom, from operational units to strategic leadership roles, he brings a wealth of experience to the conversation. So let's get into it. Mr. Napoli, welcome to Cohort W. How does it feel to be in the guest seat today?
Well, I have to tell you, after that introduction, first of all, I'm humbled. The second piece is I feel old. I never really thought about it before that I have been contributing for measured in decades. That is quite the perspective, but I appreciate the introduction very much. And I am very, very happy to be here today. I love talking about what we do, how we do it, and why we do it. And so I'm humbled to be here, and I definitely appreciate the invitation, sir.
Let's start with your journey. You've had an incredible career, from enlisting as an Aeroscout Observer in 1993 to now serving as the Deputy Commandant of the Warrant Officer Career College. That's a long road, filled with deployments, leadership roles, and instructional experiences. How have those diverse assignments, especially your time as an instructor pilot in Kuwait and multiple deployments, shaped your perspective on the evolution of warrant officer roles?
So I was really fortunate. I've had a blessed career. Like you said, starting as an Aeroscout Observer in 1993, I never imagined that my calling in life to serve in the military would have afforded me the opportunity to do it for 32 years at the point when I retire. So I am just very fortunate and blessed to have been allowed to serve this long. And at the same time, too, I found that every assignment has equipped me for the next assignment and then the next assignment. And so to include the time working with the Kuwaiti Air Force that you had mentioned, that was a unique opportunity to work with a foreign military. And one of the big takeaways there is just because they do it different doesn't make it wrong. It just makes it different. That has, that one life lesson has applied in many, many ways in the educational field, especially with interacting with our students. You can't help but to learn over 3 decades how to apply things in the classroom. And I love how you described from the cockpit to the classroom. And it was an easier transition than I thought it would be, just because as an instructor pilot, classroom is part of it. But the thing that has really influenced my perspective on the evolution of the warrant officer roles is I got to see it as an enlisted soldier, and then I got to see it as a W1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And so while the education has evolved, that role, that primary role of the warrant officer has basically remained the same. To be that, we just codified it with better words now, but basically the same, with the addition of additional responsibilities for leadership and command opportunities that I didn't think were going to be possible in my younger days. But it's been a blessed career, and hopefully it's translated well to the students as they hopefully are benefiting from experiences I've had to help shape them in their journey.
In recent publications within the Army University Press platform, USAWOC has emphasized the need to modernize Warrant Officer PME to enhance warfighting lethality and readiness. What are some of the key initiatives currently underway to modernize PME, and how do they align with the Army's broader transformation efforts?
So modernization, it's got several different categories, if we can call it that. So it's a multifaceted process. Some of those modernization efforts are based on requirements. Just like every military organization, we've got requirements from higher as well, but they're welcome changes. As we shift focus and have shift focus doctrinally from the counterinsurgency fight to the more modern warfare, which is actually, what's new is old, the large-scale combat operations through the multi-domain operations. And so it's been fun watching that transformation take place in doctrine, but even more interesting as we shape the minds of the learners as they're making that mental transition, because change is sometimes very difficult for some. But for the modernization pieces, it's not only modernizing the curriculum, but it's also trying to modernize the facilities too. And because a good learning environment does nothing but to facilitate learning. And so the idea is that we're also looking at a campus modernization plan for Warrant Officer Candidate School for as an example. And there's the additional work of trying to accomplish the Warrant Officer Master Course and make that a reality, because there's been a gap that's been identified at that strategic Warrant Officer level that we can close. We already have the experience piece, but we need to also close it with an educational piece as well. Modernization is also changing a culture at the Warrant Officer Candidate School, for example. So there's been a lot of talk about the benefits of the candidate-led strategy, which some of us old folks are resistant to, but the candidate-led strategy, it's important to understand, it's not a candidate-run strategy. They still have boundaries through TAC officers, but they have officership that's being exercised, and decision-making is being exercised when they're given a little bit more leeway on how do they accomplish what it is they need to accomplish. It gives them opportunity to prioritize based on what is required versus what they're being told to do. And I'll tell you right now, this Warrant Officer Career College, and I sincerely mean it, this is the best education that this institution has ever put out, what we're doing right now. And the exciting part is that it's only getting better as we go through the modernization process.
Let's talk a little bit now about integrating emerging technologies. So technology is evolving at a blistering pace. AI, cyber warfare, unmanned systems, and advanced data analytics are reshaping how wars are fought. How is USAWOC adapting its curriculum to ensure warrant officers aren't just keeping up, but mastering these emerging technologies?
So as the curriculum gets modernized, we have that responsibility to ensure that we are, as you described, not just keeping up with times, but also looking beyond what is on the short-term horizon, but looking farther beyond that. So it's weapon capabilities that our adversaries may be exercising, but also reminding folks that we also have some pretty incredible capabilities too. You don't want to advertise all the good stuff that can threaten us on the battlefield without advertising all the good stuff that's in place for us to threaten our adversaries. And that's really in line with the Chief of Staff of the Army's number one priority of warfighting. And so informational gathering and harvesting of that and presentation in the classroom only benefits the students. And what do we do with that information is processed through that system of education with data literacy. It's one thing to know information, but how do commanders process information? What can warrant officers do to provide that information as part of data literacy? And then you mentioned artificial intelligence. Incredible tool that is out there that's only getting more and more powerful. So as an educational facility at the Warrant Officer Career College, we can capitalize on the benefits of artificial intelligence, but because we're in an education arena, we expect our students to also not utilize that in the quote plagiarism or the cheating aspect when writing papers, as an example. because the AI is capable of doing a lot of things, but we still have the learning that has to be provided too. So some of our rapidly developing technologies that are out there, sometimes it's very simple just bringing them back into the classroom and saying, hey, don't dismiss this. You're be empowered to use this, whatever it might be, in this case AI, but also be cautious of some of it too, because AI is still artificial. There's some great advancements in it, but it doesn't always provide you the right answer at all times, as an example. But it is absolutely an exciting time because there's technologies that are being utilized that we have a responsibility to make sure we're sharing that. And part of this too is, part of this modernization with emerging technologies is also students who know things in their own field. And this is the beautiful part of warrant officer education, is that we put all of our MOSs in the same room, and they are able to share the emerging technologies in their field that another field or branch may not be aware of. So the students become the teachers in many cases because they are on the front lines of these emerging technology opportunities. So it's exciting. I know every time I'm teaching, I find myself leaving smarter than when I walked in because of the experience that our students have with these emerging technologies.
Yes, it's great to hear how PME is integrating those emerging capabilities, and also how we're learning from the students, from the prior knowledge and experiences. Because at the end of the day, the warrant officers need to be as proficient in digital warfare as they are in traditional leadership roles. All right, let's shift the conversation just a bit and discuss balancing tradition with innovation. So the warrant officer cohort is built on tradition, our role, our expertise, our leadership style. But modernization often challenges traditions. How do you balance honoring the legacy of the warrant officer cohort while implementing the necessary changes to meet the needs of the modern force?
So I think that they can run concurrently. And emerging technologies, you can look at any span in history that warrant officers were a part of, and emerging technologies were already there. Modernization was already there. And so our traditions kind of ran concurrently. What we found is that some of our traditions get lost over time due to the lack of practice and the lack of reinforcing and the lack of muscle memory of some of our traditions. So we can look at Warrant Officer Candidate School, for example, the tradition of a class song. It was a tradition, then it wasn't a tradition. It was a tradition, then it wasn't a tradition. And those that had it was still there. And those that didn't have it when they were a candidate, it doesn't mean anything to them. So, for example, right now we don't have a class song. We just don't have time to give the students to devote to that. Because if we're an educational institution, we need to be educating. And that tradition is one of those things that kind of has to fall off the plate, just like it would if we were in an active duty operational unit. So it is challenging sometimes because we want to hold on to all of the traditions. I just wish there were enough hours in the day to actually maximize all of our traditions. But that's just a matter of prioritization. I don't think we've lost anything with some of the traditional things, what people would consider traditional. I don't think we've lost anything. I think the benefits and gains have been far greater than some of the traditions we've lost. But as a nostalgic person, I love the traditions that have been out there over the years. And I just wish that we could continue to embrace all of them. But we do have to be realistic with what we have in the opportunities to manage that time.
In your Deputy Commandant's Corner articles, you've written about the importance of mentorship. Can you share how mentorship is being integrated into PME programs to foster leadership development in future warrant officers?
Absolutely. It's something that I have found myself migrating more and more the older I get, is understanding the value of mentorship. And that mentorship, it could be a formalized session or it could be a situational opportunity to share with others. The curriculum itself, we've got more mentorship opportunities baked into the curriculum than I think at any point in the history of the college, because we've got a lot of positive responses from the students during the end of course surveys. In fact, some want even more mentorship. I can tell you that the candidates they're thirsty for it. I found that ILE students are thirsty for it, and I found that the SSE students are thirsty for it. But they're thirsty for different things. They want different flavors of mentorship. The candidates want to know, what does W1 look like? ILE students, they want to know what I can expect working at a brigade or higher level. And then the senior staff or the senior education students, they want to know about, let's say, promotion boards to W5. They're very specific things that each group wants for mentorship. And this is when we do those mentorship sessions that it's important for whoever is guiding that discussion. They go in with the understanding this is a blank canvas. And I've got talking points prepared, but the class may want to go a different direction, which there's a mentorship lesson inside of that as well. But one thing that we do that we started doing about 3 years ago, is it has really paid off, I think, is separating the tech warrant officers from aviation warrant officers for a 2-hour mentorship session. And what we found is that it gets a little bit more ethical, because let's be honest, the tech warrant officers don't care about aviation mentorship, and aviation warrant officers don't care about tech mentorship. So by separating them, it's an opportunity just to talk their specific lane, if you will, for expectations. A tech warrant officer doesn't care what RL progression means in aviation speak, and the aviation doesn't really care how the fuel gets to where it's supposed to go. It just needs to be there when they get there. At the junior levels, they're not too concerned about some of those things. So aviators are probably, as W1s, are not going to be leading a section at the motor pool, whereas a 915 will be. So it's just different requirements and different mentorship values attached to those sessions. And we have got positive feedback from every single mentorship session that's taken place, and that's something that has to be sustained, in my opinion, because of the value it does provide.
Oh, that's so important. Mentorship isn't just about passing down knowledge. It's about shaping mindsets, building confidence, and creating the next generation of leaders who could think critically in uncertain environments.
And if I can add one more thing too, our TAC officers are that front line of mentorship opportunities with candidates specifically. And regardless of what level of PME we're talking about, when an individual is spending time, even if it's in a classroom setting, just having a basic one-on-one conversation during their reflective times afterwards, they are putting the pieces on how it applies to me and how it applies to somebody else later. It may not mean anything in the moment, but when they're reflecting on it later, or when it pops up 3 years later, or whatever the case is, they can go back and say, oh, I remember having a conversation about this very scenario. And so the value may not be immediate. It may pay off later on, which is also kind of fun to explore as well.
PME can't be static. It has to evolve based on real-world feedback. How does USAWOC gather and incorporate feedback from recent graduates and operational units to continuously improve the curriculum?
So this is the challenge for gathering feedback. We gather feedback from individual students through the end of course surveys. They get asked a series of questions, and they provide their experience with candidate school or PME. When they go out into the field, sometimes, and we all have done this, we've deleted surveys that come in. So the participation rate is a lot less than the Army would like to see. And that's any survey from any organization, not just the Warrant Officer Career College, because we do get overwhelmed with surveys. And then sometimes we get surveys that we think we have already completed because it was very similar to the last one we completed. So it is challenging to gather the data. And I recently read a survey. The survey was discussing how good are warrant officers at their technical task was one of the questions provided to a commander. But it was interesting is that commanders tie warrant officer technical tasks to the Warrant Officer Career College. And those two are not the same. We do the Common Core education, whereas WOBC, advanced course, and so on, they will have their own tech flavor. So sometimes the data is not reflective of what we produce at the Warrant Officer Career College, just by the way the questions might be formulated from another entity. If Big Army is asking, how are your warrant officers doing? Well, they didn't get this in candidate school. As an example, if it's a tech thing, well, they wouldn't get it in candidate school. And I think sometimes there's that lack of understanding that we only provide the Common Core thing and education, and the thing that's provided at WOBC starts their technical piece. So there's a little bit of disconnect there, I think, with some of the surveys, which taints a little bit of the data on how well we're doing or how poorly we're doing, because it kind of gets lumped together. But the primary methodology has been through surveys. There are also informal conversations that do happen among senior warrant officers here and there, and those get captured with our own after-action review process internally to try to make things better for the students. Because the idea behind this institution is that we provide every warrant officer with the best education possible, and sometimes we need outside eyes to truly see ourselves in that light.
The battlefield is no longer just U.S. forces operating alone. It's joint and multinational efforts that define modern conflict. What steps are being taken within PME to ensure warrant officers are prepared for joint and multinational collaboration?
That is a great question. And I wish we had longer in the course, every course, just to devote to joint operations, because it is, as you described, it is a real thing. It is very important to have an understanding. So we don't scratch the surface as deep as most of us would like. It's just the nature of the time we have for our courses. But the big piece is exposure. Warrant officer education, I think the most difficult thing to make warrant officer education relevant is the fact that it's one size fits all, but it doesn't always fit. Just because of varying levels, varying jobs go at different levels. So, for example, aviators will be at a company level, platoon level when they first start, whereas a human resources tech will start at a brigade level or higher. So it's very difficult sometimes to get the when is the right place for their education, not so much what education is being provided. So the joint multinational operations, the big thing that we offer on that is exposure to what the doctrine requires. And so a candidate will get a certain level of exposure to joint doctrine, to understand that it's out there, you're going to be exposed to it depending on your field. And then when they go on to their WOBC, the expectation is that it will continue there. And then on the job, of course, if they're in a joint environment, then that education will continue at that level. And ILE students and SSE students, once again, exposure to what the doctrine requires. And the amazing part about every student at every level, there are so many folks that come into this educational environment with joint experience. And as an instructor, I'm always asking for, tell me about your joint experience, because we, once again, share with each other, and this is where the networking of educational information gets exchanged, and there's something powerful and real versus doctrine versus people's experience with joint operations. So it is exciting in the classroom. Once again, I get excited about it because I come away with these conversations smarter than when I walked into them, because my joint experience has been limited. When you talk about 32 years, only about 4 years of those was designated joint time. So my experience is going to be different from other people's experience. So it is important that we do cover it, but unfortunately, it's going to be doctrine level with exposure to experience from individual students.
Oh, that's so crucial. Joint operations aren't the exception anymore. They're the standard. And we need warrant officers who can operate in that space seamlessly. All right, let's discuss a little bit about emphasizing strategic leadership. At a certain point, technical expertise isn't enough. Warrant officers have to become strategic leaders. How is PME evolving to prepare senior warrant officers for high-level decision-making and advisory roles?
I love this question because it really feeds to the most senior warrant officers in these nominative positions. So not only is the warrant officer curriculum being modernized, it's also growing. So there is a warrant officer master course that is being developed right now that has that strategic warrant officer, that strategic level warrant officer in mind. It's going to be devoted to the warrant officers that are in nominative positions or going into nominative positions at those strategic levels, because there's been an identified gap that just being a W5 doesn't make you a strategic thinker, because now you're relying on experiences that maybe not every W5 has. So to bridge that, we are going to be participating in the Chief Staff of the Army's pre-command course, and along with that is going to be a block of time that's set aside for just those W5s that are in the class with the sergeants majors and the colonels and part of their senior leader seminars that we're going to devote to just those warrant officers to help them understand some of the terminology and the way that senior officers and senior NCOs think at the strategic level. We can have conversations all day long, but if we don't understand the mindset of those senior leaders, it becomes very difficult for us to do our job as an integrator and as an advisor, as a counselor. So it's important for us to have the time with those senior leaders. Conversely, it's good for those senior leaders to have time with the warrant officers, because they may not have experience working with senior level warrant officers and fully understanding what it is they bring to the operation. So that dual exposure at the pre-command course is going to be very valuable as it falls under that umbrella of the Warrant Officer Master course. I think it's going to start off at a certain point, and it's going to continue to improve and improve and improve. You know, we don't always get everything right the first time. Sometimes we get it even more right the second time or the second iteration. But nevertheless, there are some very intelligent people that are working on this very project, and it should be available starting October of 2026. And it is going to be, I think it's going to be something that's going to be very special for the warrant officers, but more importantly, it's going to be special for command teams that warrant officers are going to be involved with at that nominative level of senior leaders in all three compos.
All right, so I have a on-the-spot quick-fire question here. So those warrant officers who have completed the Senior Service Education course, or WOSE, are they going to be required to attend WOMIC, the master course, or will they be grandfathered in?
I love the question. Very, very important question. Not everybody that's a W5 would go to the Warrant Officer Master course. It is designed for those nominative positions, and in some cases, general select positions, because not every senior strategic level warrant officer is in a nominative position. Sometimes they've been selected for a position because of a past relationship they had with a senior leader, and they've proven their quality, and that senior leader wants them on their staff. So those are the target audience for the Warrant Officer Master course. It's not every W5 or promotable W4. It's targeting the specific positions that are at those higher levels. There are W5s that work at a division level. They may not be going to the master course because that's just a standard MTO position, for example. Yeah. But if they get a nominative position to, say, go work at the Pentagon, then this is where that master course would really benefit the most with those interactions in their future job.
Modernizing PME isn't easy. There are institutional challenges, budget constraints, and evolving priorities. What have been some of the biggest obstacles in modernizing PME, and how have you worked to overcome them?
So the challenges really lie with the valuable resource of time. We don't have a full staff. We don't have a fully developed section that does nothing but develop criteria. They're also instructors. They're also staff members. So the challenge is time in fitting that in, because we are just like every other Army organization. We are short people. And so we absorb the same responsibilities that we had with a full complement of warrant officers and staff and civilians. So we have the same challenges as the rest of the Army. So time becomes a challenge to modernize, and the suspenses for some of our modernization requirements present a challenge as well. If we had 10 years to do it, then it's probably a little bit easier to kind of plan it out. So the challenge at times is probably the biggest one. Some other side things too is change is difficult when folks are resistant to change, but just their human nature. So that can be a challenge. and having the people to do it, creates a challenge, along with the time, along with not wanting change. But I will tell you that it has been welcome changes for the most part. And once we get people to understand the why, they're like, oh, this makes complete sense. Let's do this. Let's make it better. And I think sometimes leaders in any institution, if they can take the time and make the time to explain the why, people get on board with change very quickly. And we found that to be true here as well. One of the things that is a unique challenge here for modernization is that when we make a change for a warrant officer candidate school, for example, we have to remind ourselves it also impacts 26 regional training institutes. So National Guard has warrant officer candidate schools as well. And so we are the proponent for their education. So if we implement a change, let's say that comes with a resource requirement, we have now told 26 other locations, you have the same requirement. They may not have the funding or the people at the time to implement that. So we have to not do things in a vacuum here. We have to consider the impacts to our National Guard brothers and sisters that are trying to accomplish the same thing inside their home state. So that's probably the biggest challenge, is us remembering change here can be painful and resisted, but what are we also putting on organizations outside of us? So I'd say that's probably the biggest challenge, is just reminding ourselves of that important detail.
Yes, that's such a great point. It's not just about updating slides. It's about overcoming systemic barriers to make the meaningful change. So looking ahead, what is your vision for the future of Warrant Officer PME? And how do you see USAWOC shaping the next generation of warrant officers?
Well, fortunately, the students that come through here are stellar. So we don't have to do a lot of shaping, because we've got tremendous talent, tremendous capability, tremendous work ethic inside the warrant officer cohort that is incredibly valuable. They come here and get maybe a little refined on the education side. So the beautiful part is I don't have to take on the burden of making them better. We're just going to make them more informed and more educated so they can go out and do the great things they're already doing. So that part of it, I think, is relatively easy. But I find a lot of solace in the fact that the students are smarter now than when I came through. And you could pick whether it's ILE, SSE, or candidate school. They're naturally smarter. They're naturally more gifted. They're certainly more technically savvy with some of the mechanisms we use to deliver education than I ever was at that level. So I have a very strong peace of mind when it comes to what our students bring into the classroom and what we teach each other as students and learners in the classroom. And then there's an instructor there that's also facilitating as well, that comes in with so much preparation time to ensure that we're delivering the quality education that we all want to deliver. So it's exciting watching classes graduate, because I know their capabilities before they came in were already tremendous, and they just got a little bit more education at least on their way out. So it's fun to watch that transition take place.
Yeah, that's a great answer, sir, and I love it. Warrant officers are at the heart of Army modernization, and it's clear that the work happening at USAWOC is setting the foundation for the future. Sir, do you have any last thoughts or additional words of wisdom for our listeners?
Well, I don't know if it's words of wisdom so much as it is just sincere appreciation for my time as a warrant officer. I have had tremendous leaders, and they have really valued me, and I really value those that come through here as students or as staff or as instructors or as TAC officers. I will retire this year, and I sincerely and authentically am pleased to know, not I think, but I am pleased to know that my replacement is in place, whether it is a replacement as a deputy commandant, it's a replacement as a warrant officer. I teach my replacements every day, and I am so comfortable with your replacement, with my replacement that's coming out of this institution. We've got such talented people, and I can retire knowing that the Army is in good hands because of the warrant officers. It makes me incredibly proud and incredibly honored and blessed to have been part of it for so long.
Mr. Napoli, This has been an incredible discussion. Thank you for your time, your leadership, and your commitment to ensuring the Warrant Officer cohort is ready for the future fight.
It has been my pleasure to be here. This was a priority for me today because I believe in what you're doing through the podcast, through the fellowship. It's humbling to be a part of it, and I am very proud to have been a part of it today. So thank you very much. Very challenging questions, and hopefully the answers were enlightening for the audience as they are when they come in for the education itself. So thank you so much for your time and what you're doing for the cohort.
And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Cohort W. We'll be back with more conversations on the future of Warrant Officer PME. Until next time, stay sharp, stay adaptable, and keep leading from the front.
W